All right. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Melissa Coleman. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing at Amitros and a founding member of the Transitions. If this is your first time joining us, well, welcome. But we wanted to give just a little bit of background about what the Transitions is. It was sparked out of a session at the National Workers' Compensation and Disability Conference, and it was a presentation on passing the torch to the next generation and kind of the impending talent gap in our industry. So we have started this as a more formalized organization, and we've held several webinars now on reimagining various parts of our industries. So, you know, we've had one on management styles, business processes, technology strategies, as we look to the next 5, 10, 15 years within our industry. You can find recordings of all of those webinars and information on our mentorship program on our brand new website, thetransitions.org, which we can paste into the chat. But today, we have a fantastic panel here to discuss how we can reimagine marketing methods. So our panelists are well-versed in marketing strategies, and they each run innovative programs within their organizations. And one thing is, this is intended to be an interactive discussion, so please feel free to put your questions into the chat at any point during the discussion, which is in kind of the side panel right there for you. So I wanted to introduce our panelists. So I want to start with Kristen Chavez.
Hey there. Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. Thank you, The Transitions, for putting on this webinar. I'm Kristen Chavez, and I'm the General Manager of Work Comp Central. I've been with Work Comp Central for 17 years now, a long time. I know, I still can't believe it. And so I started with it was going to be a 1-month project. Here I am 17 years later.
Awesome. Thank you. Tammy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tammy Boyd. I'm the Vice President of Digital Strategy and Business Development with WorkersCompensation.com. I've been in the workers' compensation industry for over 10 years. I was mostly in the post-acute neuro space previous to my current role as the Vice President of Business Development and Marketing.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Chrissy.
Hi everyone, I'm Chrissy Gall. I'm Vice President of Marketing at Carisk Partners. I've been with Carisk for 4 years, and prior to that, I actually worked in the pharma biotech space for a long time on both the pharmaceutical side as well as on the agency side. So I can see things from multiple perspectives, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you again.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all again for joining us. So today we're going to be speaking about preparing for future generations, but this time from a marketing perspective. So millennials and even Gen Z will soon be, really the decision makers in our industry. And not only that, but they'll also be the injured workers that our industry is really focused around. So how we think about and market to this audience and younger generation will require some shifts from us. I think we know they're very tech savvy. So I think it will require us to adopt new strategies and technologies, and that's kind of what we're hoping to discuss today. So to kick off our discussion, I think it'd be good to start with some background. So in the last few years, I think marketing's changed pretty drastically as new technologies come out. Automation, I think, is such a big component. What are some of the changes that each of you have seen evolving in the past few years? I know, Tammy, as we were kind of prepping for this discussion, you talked about the rise of graphic design and video. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Just back when I started my career, back when I was 19 years old in marketing, we didn't have all the tools in our toolbox or digital toolbox that we have today. The internet wasn't accessible. It wasn't a thing. Social media didn't even exist until 2004, 2006. So today we have all this technology literally at our fingertips with our phones and different apps and videos, strategies that we can use. So I've just found that to be such a huge resource, because prior to that, literally it was zip code analysis, canvassing businesses, going through the yellow pages, attending chamber networking events, hosting morning coffees, and things like that to really get what I call word of mouth out. And so to this day, I still use that word of mouth marketing as a strategy. I think it's valuable, and that especially for organizations that don't have a big marketing budget to pull from. So if you have a really strong product placing and you're consistent with your messaging, word of mouth is so effective.
Definitely. Yeah, I know, Kristen, you were talking about some content development too, being one of the major components of what you guys focus on.
Yeah. Over time, it was content development. The biggest words we're going to use today are going to be like knowledge, subject matter knowledge. But the biggest thing is the end user has changed, and how we're developing the content for them. There's so many different things that you want to get across. It was white papers before, it was the lectures and everything. And now we're changing where you can give people bite-sized stuff and how they can apply it to their current practice, and how, now with even being remote, everybody has their own different workstations, where before it was cubicles, and how everybody was kind of like sitting and everything. So again, content development is just going to be understanding what the end user wants versus before of here's our brand, here's our product, here's what we do, but how now are they going to apply it to them? So content development really is, and we'll talk about it later of the different marketing tools and everything, but content development has just changed so much of just, something versus how are they going to take it and apply it, into that type of thing. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then I know, Chrissy, we were talking about the way that a marketer's role has changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tammy talked about technology as an enabler, and it literally puts into the hands of every marketer the ability to execute real time. So not only has it given us tools so that we can market differently, but our time frame by which we're trying to execute has gone from this to this, and it's real time, which is good because it gives us the ability to react. So when I find young marketers, enabling them to get comfortable with the technology, they're really fast in being able to pick it up. So I let them run with it. But really then it's how do we make sure that everyone has the baseline knowledge of workers' comp or the product, and, to develop some of that content, I think is one of the areas of opportunity that we need to kind of close the gap on. We do a lot of goal setting too with our teams. I like to know what a marketer's short and long-term career goals are. So if you asked anybody today, what is marketing? It's a pretty broad question. Like, where do you even start? So I'd like to dial into kind of what are the 3 to 5 year and maybe the 10-year goals for somebody, and understand what their career looks like, and then give them exposure to different skill sets and building onto that skill sets over time, so that they have the ability to wear multiple hats and kind of train cross-functionally and identify the area that really energizes them and that they're good at. So not only is it technology-based, but also I think based upon the evolving generations, how they're coming through and what they're driven by, that's changed as well. So we're catering to that a little bit, and I find that that's the fun part of what we're doing.
Definitely. Awesome. Yeah, I guess one of the biggest things that I don't think any of us can escape is the pandemic has obviously changed many aspects of all of our jobs and our lives, but I think particularly has disrupted how we market. I know, we were kind of talking about in-person events that completely changed, what folks were doing. I think more of a reliance on online communications to get in front of our customers. So Kristen, I know you navigated some significant change with the Comp Laude conference. Do you want to share?
Yeah. So with going virtual, it was a scary time of trying to understand a world that hadn't really been explored yet. I mean, we were doing webinars, you were doing things, but to do a conference virtually was kind of, unknown. But the biggest thing, I mean, it takes just as much energy, I feel. I mean, obviously more physical when you're on site doing it, but trying to make sure every detail, the biggest thing is, engagement not just from the attendees, but from your sponsors, from the speakers, because the speakers were all going through new transitions as well, where before it's like, okay, I have your phone number, you go to a green room, they're either there or they're not, and you're locating them, to now, like, once they get there, the technology or what they're going to run into as speakers, internet being down, is a storm happening. So adding a lot more difficulties. So managing a conference virtually was interesting, but there are so many tools now on engagement. Obviously, we learned a lot from last year. We'll be virtual again this year, but just in this GoToWebinar system, I don't know if all the attendees know, but they'll be graded at the end, and us as marketers will go look how engaged were they, what worked, what didn't. All of you have either triangles of we're not in your front screen right now, but we'll use that. And so going virtually, it was a learning experience, and obviously we'll have learned a lot, but the biggest thing was have fun. We're all, now so comfortable. I'm like, I might have a little guy walk by right now and I'll just keep going, versus before I'd be like, I'm so sorry. So with that, it was having fun. It was like letting go, and technology, even in this last year, has changed so much that, it's going to change how this year's Comp Laude is. So.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I just saw a lot of those triangles go back to they're paying attention.
Yeah, they all want good grades, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Chrissy, I know you were talking a lot about webinar and digital strategy that you guys have been working on. Do you want to dig a little bit into that?
Well, and Kristen, 100%, I feel, and I remember over a year ago doing a program with you all, and you not only brought the fun, but you encouraged us to bring the fun. And, becoming creative was just something we needed to just sit and take time for, because the technology was there. We quickly found that without being able to meet with people face to face, separate from also conferences, our sales team also wanted to be meeting. And I think back to the beginning of the pandemic, people needed connection. We were all out of our offices. And so I think we found that people were willing to meet, even though it was over Zoom, whether it be for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And so the technology really, I think, helped try to bring people together as much as possible. We quickly started to invest in increasing our space on some of the platforms like GoToWebinar. We actually utilize Microsoft Teams as a way of keeping our team internally organized. So we shifted from SharePoint, which can be a little clunky, to Microsoft Teams, and I've seen our team get more productive as a result, and our communication is faster in the absence of being able to meet in person. So I think technology again really helped, but our younger marketers were game for it and really responsive, and I think we tried to continue to bring that into the virtual space when it comes to conferences, but I think our number one opportunity, and will continue to be, is engagement, whether or not it's virtual or in person. We're always looking at it from the audience's perspective. If you're somebody who's listening or wanting to engage, that's the number one question in my mind is, are we touching on that for you? So that's kind of our approach.
Yeah, I think we noticed that too from the transitions perspective too, of picking up, webinars quickly during the pandemic. Folks, I think to your point, we're looking to hear things that they would have heard at conferences, or honestly just see different people than their families or their spouses that they saw every day. So I think it was definitely about that connection. I think that kind of leads into, Tammy, one of the things that you were talking about too, reluctance to go back to in-person events, and will in-person events be at the capacity or strength from a marketing perspective that they were before?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as we were opening here earlier in the summer, things are kind of changing kind of quickly right now as we're talking, but there seems to be an openness and a willingness for people to go into in-person events. I just attended the Saki event a couple of weeks ago, and I was at an event in South Florida last month for an event, and there was a comfort level. I think everybody took a big deep pause, but there's still work restrictions in place. There's mask mandates that are starting to come back into play. So there's a lot of things that are swirling right now that people like, I can understand the reluctance. So one of the things that has been really, I think, as a silver lining in the pandemic has been the ability for everybody to shift. And there's been a lot of efficiencies, like with meetings are a lot more efficient. People show up right on time. They're not waiting for a long period of time. And everybody's like very respectful mindful of everybody else's time to make sure that meetings are ending on time. So I think that's like some of the efficiencies that really grew out of it. And I think it has made people more productive in their workplace, even at home. Because I think from an employer's perspective, they're probably thinking, is my employee really working? Are they motivated? Are they really doing what they're, I'm paying them to do at home? So I think, I know for us at workerscompensation.com, what I really enjoy is that we have I think a lot of organizations have this too. It's our morning huddle. And I found that really valuable. I feel that connectedness that we have. And so we can talk about what's going on of each department that's within our organization. I really love that value because prior to that, with a prior organization I was working with, I didn't have that connectedness. There wasn't that formal meeting on a regular basis. So a lot of times for me, I felt a bit of a disconnect. So I really like that we all, even though we're all working in different places, that we are all huddled together. And part of that too is what, when we all had to pivot, there weren't any best practices. So for me, I took the initiative and found researched on my own, like what should others be doing to make sure that when you are either hosting or attending the event, what's the value? So make sure even with your internet connectivity, make sure that it's strong, especially if you're doing from a hosting perspective. Do you have good lighting? Do you have a good high definition camera or a camera that is producing well? So I invested in a high def camera. I invested in audio that's outside of just the normal desktop model that I have, invested in halo lights. So there's other things that go into it that are nuances that maybe people really don't just think about when they're presenting online, that I find that was valuable and resourceful for others. And I shared that with people that I thought that was a connectedness because we all were learning all at the same time. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned quite a bit of different technology too. And I think we mentioned it a couple of different times already, but marketing technology and platform is much more robust now. I feel like there's so many different programs that you could be using, even today compared to 2 years ago. So I wanted to get your thoughts on what are some of the panels that are some of the programs that you use the most frequently or that you've adopted, in the last 5 years. I know, Chrissy, you have quite a few that you use.
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of them. I think the biggest one that kind of harnesses everything in one place is Google Analytics. They actually just launched an update for the marketers dashboard where, they're trying to get a finer lens onto the user journey, not just the acquisition data, but in the example where somebody might not be accepting cookies, how do you still track certain things over time? But it also ties all of our campaigns together. Even though in some cases we may execute in silos, we can still try to tie some things together. And I've also found that our younger marketers, they tend to know more about it than I do. And that's great. I love that because one, they might be used to that type of an interface, but they're also working within the programming. They're doing the search engine optimization. They're making sure the paid search campaign is working. And when they share their insights with our senior leadership, it's pulling from all of that database. And so I'm a data junkie when it comes to marketing. I love to see the data. I like to follow trends and see, are we having an impact over time? Are our campaigns working in the ways that we thought they were? Where is it not working? What can we be doing differently? And so I find Google Analytics to be pretty good and useful. I think there are a number of other technologies, and I'd love to get Kristen and Tammy's perspective and Melissa yours on some of the other technologies that you guys are using as well.
Yeah, we also did have a question come into the chat. Chrissy, in your experience, is Google Analytics easy to take advantage of without formal training?
Well, so that's a really good question. I actually follow a lot of their tutorials or when they send out their updates. I really recommend that people engage in the Google tutorials. There's a lot of information out there that you can just find if you do an easy search, but I would take the 5 to 10 minutes just to see what the updates are. Because Google Analytics is so deep and rich, you can have kind of like the high level executive dashboard, But if you want to drill in, you can be drilling in and get lost for an hour and a half. So know what it is that you're looking for at the time. Come to the table with some consistent metrics that you know you want to track over time. Those metrics should be tied to your objective. If they're not, you're down a path, you can pull yourself back out and get back on track. And then I know that there are also certifications. So, you know, our organization likes to support the development of any employee. And so if there's a certification out there that anybody wants to go get, we'll pay to have that training done, because it just feeds back into the business and it optimizes what we're doing over time. So I think that answered the question, but I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add to that.
One thing that I will say, because I know probably not everyone listening in is a marketer and deep into the data like we are, but Google Analytics is a program that allows you to kind of get information on your website traffic and see stats and data about, you know, folks coming to your website, what pages are the most popular, where they're going, what they're doing. Just a little definition for those of you that might not know. So Chrissy, you were throwing it out to the rest of the panel on maybe some of the other technologies that you guys use.
I'll go. So for me, I know for our organization, since we're sending out news on a frequent basis, that we don't want to inundate our users with too much information. So we schedule with our emails through Buffer and Constant Contact. And we also use Salesforce for CRM. So we're tracking our analytics with that information. We also use, which I love because I'm more on my mobile than I am on a desktop, and that's probably true for most people. So if I am doing an invite or an announcement or some kind of graphic design, I found Canva really handy and useful. I know we've had this conversation previously, and I just think that it really has that clean look that a lot of marketers are looking for, and then also it's affordable for a lot of different marketing budgets when you're looking at, like, you know, what can we afford, you know? So that's something that's easy, and they have even like a trial user platform. In previous opportunities, I was using Ripple when it first came out in the marketplace. I even had another marketer comment, wow, that's a great corporate video. And then I had to whisper to her, like, it's an app. But now that I think that's more mainstream than it had been. So there's so many of these technology tools, and I'm always tinkering and experimenting with different apps that are coming out and that are trending. And also I subscribe to different newsletters that are outside of the workers' comp industry, that I subscribe to social media and marketing specific newsletters. So I feel like I am staying on track with different trends that are going on just within the marketing realm.
Yeah, and I know we did get another question in. What digital marketing platform is best for small workers' comp consulting businesses with approximately 20 employees? So no, I mean, personally, I'd say the ones that are free to get you started. I think that's one. I know Tammy mentioned Canva. That's good for graphic design. That's free. I know you can get, you know, certain email platforms like MailChimp, or you mentioned Constant Contact, have, I think, a free to a certain amount of folks, and that's for email marketing. Yeah, I'd say definitely starting with the free options.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with, you know, like Tammy said, we use Constant Contact for our mass or our emails that go out, our promotional stuff. Again, it's good because you can break up your list in the different ways that are needed to be done. I think that that's the biggest thing, is the messaging, you know, for the different things, as well as like Hootsuite. So Hootsuite is a social media. Again, these all have apps, but the Hootsuite is one that you can plug in all your different channels that your organization is with, and then put one message out if you wanted to, or multiple messages depending on the platform. That's something we talked about, is, you know, different platforms need different messages, but with Hootsuite you can do that. And so you can also watch, you know, what's going on the different channels that you're following and associated with, and, you know, when you're tagged in something. And that's one easy way, as well as it has a friendly app. I think that's the word that we all keep saying with this this new era and everything, is apps, and having it on your phone. So, you know, you could be at your desktop, launch your stuff, and then as we're busy doing our other stuff, go check the analytics or see how things are doing, how the campaigns are going, as well as make quick edits. So Hootsuite is one. I know there's other for the social media, but I think that's common amongst all of us that we kind of all use that. And then constant contact, and then having a CRM, client relations management. I know we all use different ones, I think here, but it's a way to have your users break up your list on what's needed, on the content going out, making sure that it's relevant content to the groups that are going out. So, and being able to matrix, are they engaged, are they not? So that's kind of what I use, what we use, as well as all the other things that you all use. We use that too. That was our common thing. So
yeah, we use Hootsuite as well. It was probably one of the first things that we stood up. And keep in mind, like 4 years ago, our team there were like 2 of us, right? So Hootsuite was one of the first things that we stood up and found that it was really easy to utilize. Canva also, because of the ability to do something fast, easy, and it was free. And then we used MailChimp, but I feel like I need to look into Constant Contact now, but we're committed to MailChimp. So I would agree. I think, and in typical marketing fashion, I actually did a little bit of a survey before this to ask what are some of the new technologies. And I was surprised to hear, or maybe not surprised, even though there are some new and smaller technologies that you can use to grow, Adobe is still a staple of someone who really wants to scale to major graphic design. Adobe's suite has within itself become more nimble and agile and user-friendly. And so I wouldn't underestimate the ability to learn the skill set of what Adobe can teach you if you want to go into the design space. Because not only is it easier to use, but they also have mobile apps. So when you're talking about somebody who might be working to build content on demand from a conference, having the ability to do it from your mobile phone might actually be helpful. And so keep in mind to still look at Adobe if you know that you want to go into that space within marketing.
Definitely, and we had some great suggestions for some other apps, products that I haven't heard of, AppSumo, Active Campaign, and Influencersoft too. So there's definitely a lot of marketing technology out there, and a lot of these, I feel like companies and services have popped up again in the last 5 to 10 years. So it's definitely growing very quickly. And I think if you have a need for something, there's definitely a service out there to help you out with that.
Well, and really quick on Canva, one thing I do like about it is they've added like a Teams aspect as well. So again, that you have that branding consistency, not one designer doing this and another designer doing this, because again, marketing, it's about that consistency, the same look and feel, your brand and everything. So that's one thing about Canva. You can create teams as well, and then make sure that it all has that same thing. And again, it's free, or very budget friendly.
Yeah, one thing that I also like about Canva is you don't necessarily have to be like a super intense graphic designer to put together something that looks great. So I think they've made it very accessible for everyone to be able to make some nice graphics, whether that's for social media or wherever you're looking to put something out.
Yeah, they have a lot of great templates. I'm always excited to use it and see what else is available. And they also even have video capability, which I don't think prior that it did have, but now that you have that kind of pre-template video that you can add to it to make it look like it's more authentic to your brand.
Definitely. And I think we're kind of leading in this direction, but about kind of content development. So I think that's one of marketing's biggest jobs, is to develop content in a variety of different formats, but it's a major component of marketing strategy as we look towards the future. So Kristen, I know you mentioned a bit about how your team thinks about content, and we had a discussion about how you look at new mediums. So we talked about like Clubhouse or TikTok. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So yeah, when we were talking about this, it was, we just got a bunch of examples that we hadn't heard about. So again, and then it's these new ways to develop content or be engaged with your audience. But it comes to what we talked about is the end user as well as the content development. This Clubhouse, when they were talking to me about it, and my team was like, we want to get you on Clubhouse, but you're going to have to be there answering questions and all that stuff. And I'm like, I don't have the I would love to, I know it's the new hip thing, but I don't have the time, as well as creating, you know, the content, we talk, you know, that type of thing, as well as TikTok. How do we, you know, that's where our users are now, but will they be when they're here in the decision making? So again, it's just staying on top of that. But the content, like I said, in end user, you know, with WorkComp Central, we have a lot of different end users because we're across the board of people reading us, sponsors, advertisers. So again, we have to have so many different messages depending on who we're talking to. So it, you know, and then as well as what generation, where they are in their career, even not even just, you know, is somebody coming to our industry but brand new to somebody who's been here 10 years, you know, 7 years plus years. So again, and what do they know? What is the knowledge base? What are they trying to get from this? Is the biggest thing. You know, even on Hootsuite, like I said, we're talking on the same or all social media, but each link, my LinkedIn message is going to be different than my Facebook message to then my Twitter message, as well as how often. Twitter I can do a little bit more in the day because, you know, they have about a 17-minute life. Or LinkedIn, you're not going to post as much. So it's again in the content development is just, it's going to be, how does the end user, are they going to apply it to their caseload, their life, their, you know, their interest level, where they're at?
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely. And I think one component of something that we talked about previously was, and I think it's a thread that's kind of been woven through all of the different transition sessions that folks have been able to join, but it's this idea of the subject matter expertise. You know, the folks that have been in our industry and have so much knowledge are going to be leaving the industry in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And we might not have, you know, the younger generations as established or, you know, as aware of that thought leadership before they leave. So I know something that we were kind of talking about was getting the knowledge before it leaves, because us as marketers, we need that knowledge and that expertise to create that content. And I know, Tammy, you had some thoughts around really how we can learn from each other.
Right, I agree. Yeah, so I know it's been mentioned a few times throughout the last couple of years of this brain drain within our industry of industry experts that are retiring or leaving our industry. And currently within the workforce, there's 5 different generations of employees within the workplace. So how do we send messages to each of them because they consume information differently? The millennials, they're 50% of our workforce today. So we need to be more, I think, cognizant about how, and I don't think this was intentional in the past where we weren't addressing it. I think it was just something that it wasn't brought to our attention, and now there's an awareness about it. And I think the Transitions has been a great platform of bringing that awareness. And just recently, the last couple of weeks at the SACA conference again, that we had the Next Gen leaders, they had their own program that they put together. What I loved about it was that they were so creative, they were so energetic, and they even got the audience involved and told us we had to be excited. And so it was a Comp Talks program, and it was like a TED Talk style talk with an 8-minute presentation. So it was a different kind of format than any other presentation. And so it made it different, and it drew people in, and it kept people's attention and their engagement, which all of us marketers, that's what we're looking for. That's the golden nugget there. So with that, what I like too, I'm going to be attending another event that's coming up too, and I noticed that more of that inclusivity of having a reception specifically for 40 and under next generation. And then even I was looking at ahead a few months with WCI conference. So they have in their program for their conference, what's next after work, what's next after next in workers' compensation. And there's also women trailblazers and ceiling breakers session. So I think there's starting this momentum as there was, you know, maybe in previous years where there wasn't this diversity and inclusion and the glass ceiling even for women. So I think it's just like building an awareness campaign, and this is a great platform to do that with.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, Chrissy, you were talking about conferences and networking too, and giving your team kind of, I think, exposure to some of the folks that have been in the industry too, to absorb some of that knowledge.
Yeah, and just to go back to a little bit of what Kristen was saying, when we think about content, not only are there platforms, but there's different types of content that you might have to be building. So there's video content, there's blog postings, there's press releases, there's white papers, there are promotional materials, and it takes a very specific skill set to be able to write in each of those types of formats and then talk about the actual execution of it through whatever digital platform or whatever platform that you're providing. And so, where do you become an expert to be able to build that content? We tend to say go to networking events, go to conferences. I think back to like the Work Comp Research Institute. That's a great annual meeting where they share the most recent information, and then you can actually understand what the existing trends are. But it's a great opportunity for networking with somebody in the industry to say, here's how I'm looking at that data. Do you agree? What else did you see that maybe I didn't? And the Self-Insurance Institute, I know that they have a young leaders, just to tag on what Tammy was saying, a lot of the organizations have young leader initiatives and are making concerted efforts to add younger leaders onto their committees for succession planning purposes. So there are concerted efforts there, but I would say for sure, just become a sponge. And I mean, I don't think that that's for any young marketer, or it happens throughout your career. If you're not attending conferences, whether they're virtual, in person, or going back and looking at recordings, that's where you get to build your skill set on understanding where this industry is, what content is important, and then being able to actually use your own personal skill set and view to be able to cater that audience, I think is really important for every marketer.
Yeah, to add on to that too, Chrissy, you're right on point about self-learning and educating yourself, because just in marketing discipline alone, it's very nuanced with different skill sets, like you were saying. And so what I know I did too is I felt for me that I needed to have that certification in digital marketing to make me feel like I was proficient in it. And I learned from other industries that are even outside of workers' compensation that I could apply to my own industry.
Yeah, and then one of the things that I love about what the Transitions is doing is connecting people from a mentoring perspective, because it's one thing to learn it, it's another thing to start to apply it and understand it too. And so everyone needs those mentors in there, not only to help them with their career, but with their understanding of things. And so I love this program that the Transitions is setting up, because it really does connect people and give them the ability to have exposure to somebody who they may not have met or had the ability to meet and then learn from and be guided by in any other format other than within your own organization, or if you knew somebody. So I think this program is great.
Yeah, and I think something that came into the chat is interesting. Workers' compensation adjusters are a very niche market. Where, in your experience, is the most effective platform to find and market to them? I don't know about you guys, but that's something that we see all the time. Where are people? And I guess that kind of gets into what you're saying, where the roles of a marketer have changed too, because with the rise of all these new technologies, there's more places to reach people. So I'm curious to hear your answers to those questions, but also kind of attached to that, how do you guys measure success in your marketing campaigns and what you're looking at? And how you know if it is a good channel to reach someone?
I'll just say going back to the adjusters piece, I know WCI is a great conference to be able to connect with adjusters. So I know we always tend to try to support that, but I think, don't underestimate the ability of digital media and publishing to be able to connect with those audiences as well. And doing so in a way that you're giving content to someone who's actually ready for the content because they're actually able to consume it. And then I think your question was about return on investment, or
where in your experience is the most effective platform to find and market to adjusters?
So for me, there's never one silver bullet. I think it's really more a multiple, like you have to have a multi-pronged approach and many tactics flying at the same time with consistent messaging. I personally would also like to be able to do more information gathering and research to better understand what the needs of any audience is. Adjusters in this example, very specific. I also see the NCCI information also tends to provide some insights and trends that we tend to then try to respond to or provide information related to what we're seeing those audiences need. But so there's not just one. I think it's a multiple. We like to make sure that we're covering where our audiences are across multiple tactics.
And I was going to say, yeah, I think it's multiple as well, because, a lot of the times where I get a lot of the, and again, this isn't cost effective, but it's the local events, and there's only so many of those you can attend, or you have the teams. But with the claims adjusters, I get a lot of, the local things, like things in Sacramento, or the local RIMS, or the local, throughout the nation, the different things going on. So that's kind of not the cost effective, but the way I've gotten in contact with a lot of adjusters.
I think that's a great point that Kristen made, is the local networking, the local chapters of RIMS. We have Sarasota Bradenton Claims Association, we have the Tampa Bay Prima. So there's a lot of opportunity to try and tend to network with that. I know sometimes, I think from a marketing perspective, our hands are tied because we have to go through certain channels to get access to the adjusters. There are a lot of events that are being scheduled now that are a lot of webinars that a lot of them are free or low in cost. And sometimes even there are some programs out there that offer sponsorship for adjusters, because a lot of times they don't have the budget for it, but a lot of times the vendors that they do have a budget for that, to where they can bring them in and get them introduced to other professionals in the network.
Yeah, and I think, Chrissy, one point that I found interesting that you mentioned too was a multi-pronged approach. And I think there's that rule, like, of 7. It takes 7 touches for someone to see your message and then actually understand what you're even trying to convey to them. So I think spreading it out through multiple different platforms really makes a lot of sense, whether it's something on social media, an email, something on your website, then they see you in person. Like, it takes a few touches for them to actually get what you're trying to say. So I think a mix of all those different meetings and online things and social media in person is a great way to go about it. So I wanted to shift from marketing and technology to what's also important, which is the people working in marketing and getting them interested in workers' compensation and within our industry. So obviously the Transitions was founded because we maybe don't have a large population of millennials and Gen Z in our industry. And how do we get more millennial and Gen Z marketers interested in being within our industry? They grew up on technology, so they know it very well. And I know, Chrissy, you mentioned that you have quite a few folks within your organization and have some marketing interns.
Yeah, so well, and beyond just marketing, our organization does support a pretty strong internship program annually. And a lot of it runs in the summertime, but then we do run a smaller version of it throughout the year when we know students are in school. But for marketing, yeah, I actually have some marketers that are 3-time returns on the internship program. I also have a rising star within my own marketing team, Paige, who she was actually an intern with us initially, and then we hired her out of college. So that's one area where we tend to support and find good people, because you look at someone who's returned for 3 years now, they understand the organization, they understand the culture, they understand our products and services, and they're also getting hands-on experience in the internship with the technology to be able to fly with things. We have interns that are programming our website, running our SEO. And so those are the types of opportunities that we want to continue to support once they're finished with their schooling. We also tend to market, when we think about the younger generations, everyone is very mission driven and purpose driven. So, it's not just I'm going to do a job, it's I want to know that the job that I'm doing is helping somebody at the end of the day. And so we do have, that's core to our organization. So we do share a lot of our mission and try to connect with anyone, we want to also hire and retain talent who has that as their value and their internal mission themselves, so that we're hiring like-minded people, because this is how we're executing on things. And so those are just some of the ways that I think that we tend to not only execute but market. We also have a good diversity and inclusion program, and I think a lot of organizations do these days. We actually post ours to the website, and so we have quarterly newsletters that are really extensive. It's an entire sub-team who puts together that content. Again, we post it on our website so that people have the ability to access it and see that our organization is really supporting this. It's really not just, speak and behind the scenes, maybe you'll get exposure to it. It's right there and you can get a flavor for it.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Well, really quick, just kudos to you, Chrissy, on creating a program for that and everything. And 3-year returner, I mean, that's just, an awesome program. So kudos to you.
Thanks. That's our leadership, and so I can't take credit for it, but I do, it's really exciting to see how individuals come into the program, they grow throughout their time with you. I still stay in touch with every one of my interns that I've had, so it's natural to become a mentor if that's what they need. There's, we go through career setting as well as just the skill sets and the marketing piece. So it's one of the things I love about my job, and the ability that our leadership has really supported that for us. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I know, Tammy, you mentioned before having some of these specific, networking events for some of the younger generations at some of these conferences.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great opportunity for that inclusivity. I also like the opportunity because not everybody can attend conferences, right? So usually a lot of times that's high-level decision makers and specific individuals. So how do you get inclusivity when you have you're starting into an industry? So I think that's where individuals can be really creative and start joining some of these local chapters, and even getting into marketing specifically. There are the American Marketing Association chapters at different universities, and so I've always subscribed to that ever since I was in school. So that has always been valuable for me, and it's an opportunity for networking as well. And they deliver a lot of online content and webinars and other engaging opportunities to build your skill set. So I thought that has always been important for me. So, I mean, currently we're dealing with, that technology is always evolving and it's advancing. And you're also dealing with a really digital savvy consumer. So that person has really already vetted you out before they've come to a decision whether or not they're going to do business with you. So that's where, that you really need to focus on your core messaging. That was said earlier, that not a blanket message goes out to an entire group of people, that you really need to have segmentation with that, and the different levels, even within going back to the different generations that are in the workforce and how they're consuming it. Older generations are more likely to use your phone or email, to where younger generations are using text messaging and other platforms of engagement. So it's like trying to find that right mix of really that target specific audience that you're trying to reach. And then I like too that Transitions is also doing that. They're bringing in that inclusivity with the younger generations and doing that mentoring, actually mentoring somebody now. And so I didn't have that opportunity when I was early in my career that I wish I would have had. I thought that was just, status quo, and I found that it wasn't. And so I always felt like, okay, that's, bootstrap marketing. I'm going to have to figure it out on my own. In doing so, I didn't realize that I could lean on other individuals within our industry. And so that's where I really had to learn and value that other people have strengths that I don't. Like Chrissy has a lot of analytics that I'm like, whoa, I'm going to be having another conversation with her. That's something that I want to learn and grow, because in my previous positions that wasn't necessary. But I find that really challenge now as technology becomes more advanced and integrated into our marketing plan and platform.
Definitely. No, that's fantastic. So to give our audience some real takeaways from this discussion, I did want to throw out to each of you, what are the most important things that leaders need to focus on from the marketing perspective in the next 3 to 5 years? Now, Kristen, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think, marketing isn't tangible. We all talk, we have many different things in my organization. Marketing is very important. Everybody knows the Work Comp Central logo, but it took a lot of time to get there, but it's not tangible. The logo's there, but what are the things that are tangible with marketing? And so getting the leaderships to, believe that things are tangible, your content that you're creating is something that has value to it, and that marketing is really important. If you don't market, you're not going to be seen, heard, but also learning what's best for your organization as well as your end user. We all have different end users here in the call, so we all do different messaging, we all do different things, but we use a lot of the common technologies and everything. So I think the biggest thing is understanding marketing isn't tangible. There's no clear thing that's going to work. It's going to try something. It may not work, but being able to pivot fairly quickly and everything. So again, it's just in the next 3 to 5 years, understand your end users are changing from having, like Tammy said, all 5 generations in who you may be dealing with come across. And then we're going to even get new generations from that who came through the pandemic and had to, pivot and everything. So it's just always wanting to learn, like Tammy said, do your own education that you can, what's interesting to you and going to help you as a marketer.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, that's great advice. Tammy, what do you think? The biggest thing to focus on in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so technology is always evolving and advancing. So I think too that we need to have that awareness that it is changing, that we're going to apply new techniques. I was looking back through Facebook with that they're declining and what marketers look at for advertising and organic reach, but they show a huge decrease with Instagram and an increase with their organic reach, and even I think the ebb and the flow of it too. So you're going to have different platforms for different audiences. So I think what the takeaway is there that there's going to be a lot of new technologies that are going to come into play. So I don't see where just social media is going to be as present as it currently is. Some of the new opportunities that I see coming up are the use of artificial intelligence with chatbots, being more engaging with them. I think there's still like this newness and reluctance to engage in that, and how do you do it? So I think once that becomes more normalized, that people will start adopting it. Voice assistant marketing, I'm kind of fascinated by that. That's the Alexa marketing, and even a couple of years ago, I was at a marketing specific conference that talked about this, and it was just so foreign to me at the time, but I see now how it can play into new opportunities in marketing campaigns. And even the virtual reality is now coming into play with a lot of, especially during the pandemic, even with telehealth and how that comes into play. So I see that as a growing trend. And Chrissy's been right on as far as like with the data drives everything, even though what Kristen said as far as ROI, how do you measure that? And marketing is always that struggle of how do you measure that? And it's not always tangible, and it's not always right away. So it can be, months or years in the making. That's what I found, especially in this industry. And this industry is like very conservative and slow to change and slow to adopt certain technologies. So they're really careful in that respect. And so I like the data aspect. And then there's still like blockchain, how they're going to integrate that. So that was kind of somewhat interesting to me, and how does it apply to marketing? So it just comes down to really how do you really understand your customer or your client, and targeting that message specific to that client. To give you an example, when I was in the neuro space, and I would say for me, it was always how I would communicate in my language was, oh, it's rehab for brain injury or spinal cord injury. But when I'd go to carriers, case managers, and they would use a different language that I picked up on. It was catastrophic claims. And so once I started picking up on that and using that same vernacular, then I felt like there was more trust and engagement and relationship building to really even key into like specific keywords that are industry specific to get your marketing message across. That's been really valuable to me.
Mm-hmm. That was a lot of fantastic points, Tammy. That was great. Chrissy, what do you think?
Well, I think it starts with marketing strategy. So I can't reinforce the importance of marketing strategy and ensuring that you have a sound strategy that is going to stand the test of time. So your long-term goals really shouldn't change. The way you execute to that will change over time and should change over time. I think Kristen talked earlier about consistency in brand and in message, and that's so critical. And so making sure that your strategy is sound and then that you have a stepwise plan by which to execute to that strategy and keeping things consistent is important. Right now, there's kind of a movement underway in the workers' compensation industry that, like Tammy, I'm kind of tacking on to what you were talking about, where things in the industry are evolving, and some are talking about like a workers' comp 2.0, but there's a lot of marketing that is involved in all of that because it's changing the way that we're speaking and the language that we use. And so there is a lot of marketing in that. And so if that's where the industry is going, we as marketers need to make sure that we understand where that's headed now so that we can start to cater to it and not play catch up. And then the last thing that I'll just say is I think it's really important to have strong leadership, but also collaboration with your sales and marketing teams. So, keeping the sales team looped into what you're doing is critical, making sure that you're communicating to the sales team and sharing with them any insights that you're learning. And likewise, our sales team tends to be the first people that are hearing insights immediately. And the more that they can share that information back to us, the more that we can modify what we're doing to meet the needs of that audience and be value add. And so having that collaboration and ensuring that there's constant communication between the two and support is super important as one aspect of execution within an organization. But I would fully support what Kristen and Tammy both said too. It's all important.
Yeah, thank you. Some great points there too. I think one way, we talked about CRMs earlier, I think that's a great way to create sales and marketing alignment too, is working at the same system, seeing the same data, looking at the same information and contacts and prospects together. So I think that's a great way too. I think we have one or two questions here left to answer in the chat. Someone asked, what do you think about the use of TikTok for marketing to the younger generation? I'm on the fence about it. I know, Kristen, you felt strongly about this.
I mean, again, it's going to be, with TikTok, you have to be consistently, are you able to put the content out? Are you able to follow the trends? And is your market there? If it's there, I mean, their kids probably are there, but is it going to make it back to their parents? Are they going to? So, I mean, you can, and again, you can't just put out one video a week, not even probably one a day. That's why those influencers have, crews and everything with them all the time. So I know my kids are always on TikTok. I haven't made that jump yet, but I know there are people that have and have fun with it, and you have to have the fun with it, but is it going to get you, what you need for your brand, I guess is what you, like Chrissy said, your strategy. What is your strategy and what are you trying to accomplish and who are you trying to engage with and who's your end user?
Yeah, and is the content that we're providing there of value to them? That's my biggest, but I agree. Sorry, Tammy, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I agree. I'm still trying to identify what the approach would be to make sure that we're providing value and that we're marketing to the audience that's there.
Right. Yeah. I was going to expand on that. So I did pull up a report from Social Media Marketing Industry Report 2021, and it did say that, and these are just coming from over like 40,000 marketing professionals. So it's not a broad base of just end users that they were surveying, but they did find that with TikTok, it was ignored by most marketers. Only 9% of marketers are currently even using TikTok. So I really think it goes back to who is your audience and who are you trying to influence with your message. So still with even Facebook kind of declining, even Twitter, that Facebook is still king, but there's a big push now with even Instagram where it says Instagram is hot. 78% of marketers are using Instagram. It's the second most important social platform for marketing behind Facebook.
I think that if a conference utilized it as part of their reaching of their conference audience, or a way to engage people, I think that you'd see the uptake pretty quick. Because we would, if I knew that a conference had their audience there and that they were actively on TikTok throughout the conference, trust me, I'd be marketing to them. So maybe that's an opportunity.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Conferences, in-person events is when it's going to be easier because that content is something that's in the TikTok theme, but, and all that stuff. And do you have that personality, within your brand to do TikToks?
But the thing is with TikTok is these short, like 10, 15 second snippets of video, and see what you see too is cross-platform of that. How many times are you on Instagram and you see somebody posting their TikTok video there? So I think with that, where you see almost every social media platform, they're all adopting, even with LinkedIn, if you go onto stories, especially on your web or your mobile device, it's not on desktop, but you do see stories going across there. So I think there is that adoption of really just those nuggets of information. And I love Chrissy's idea that I do believe that somebody's going to, when these big events start happening again, that there's going to be that creativity and then that adoption. So I think, again, our industry is very conservative. So, it's got to take somebody, really stick their neck out and to have that creative juices going, and then there will be that adoption.
I see 4 creative people here that can do it for a conference that will all be at.
There you go. Perfect. We'll plan on it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I know we're coming up on the hour. A huge thank you to our fantastic panel. Please be sure to follow The Transitions. We're on LinkedIn, and again, the website, thetransitions.org. And keep an eye out for the registration link for the next webinar in our series. It's going to be Wednesday, August 11th at 1 p.m. And the topic is Reimagining Human Resources, with a fantastic panel that's going to kind of be talking about recruiting, retention, and diversity and inclusion strategies. So be sure to register for that as well. And thank you all again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week.
Too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa. Bye, everyone.
Bye.